Every now and then I will do a mod video like today. Sometimes it's something ridiculous like an unkillable being who will crash your game if he makes contact with you, and other times it's changing myself into a gorilla to take over the Commonwealth. Today, however, I don't know, I was just browsing the mod page and saw a mod creator by the name of Flamescale had made a unique frying pan weapon, and a part of me just needed to know what that would be like. So let's answer the question, can you beat Fallout 4 with a frying pan? It's a medium short-range melee weapon, if that wasn't obvious enough, and judging by the stats on this page, it's quite a good one at that. To make things a little more interesting, I decided to throw in a few other restrictions that would fit with the pan. Mainly, the only helmet I can wear is a chef's hat, once I find one, and that I cannot heal with stim packs, so mainly just with consumables, as well as the odd bed. After all, if I'm going to be using a frying pan, I may as well go full chef. Like any modded run, the link to the mod is in the description should you want to try it out for yourselves. Now with all that out of the way, let's begin. Starting at the vault exit, and I assign my stats. Nothing substantial, just a pretty run-of-the-mill melee build that will be making use of crits and VATs. I will also be grabbing the I'm Special book to bump my strength to max as soon as I get outside, just in case you're wondering why it's not a 10. I named myself Yes Chef because after binge watching 3 seasons of Hell's Kitchen, back to back, I have determined that is what all good chefs are called by their minions. In retrospect, I should have called him Frying Dan, but sadly that only occurred to me after finishing the recording sessions. Leaving the vault, and first things first, I need to find a frying pan. According to the author, it is commonly used by low-level raiders, so what better place to check than Concord? Sure enough, as soon as I arrive, the very first raider that rushes me is equipped with a pan. Naturally, I cannot kill her to take the weapon, I'll need Preston to take her out for me. He currently has his hands full with the rest of them, so I decided to just kite this one around the buildings to hopefully give him enough time to deal with the others, plus I don't like the idea of running in circles while being shot at by multiple raiders. For those of you who may be on the fence about downloading the mod, for some reason, let me say that I recommend it on the sound design alone. Maybe I am easily amused, but that sound just got me every single time I heard it in this run, and spoilers, I would be hearing it a lot. Preston only seems to land 1 in every 5 shots, so I'm running in circles far longer than is really necessary. After receiving a mild concussion, Preston finally does his job and completely disarms the raider. This completes the out of time quest, leveling me up and fully healing me at that, but most important of all, I can now take the rusty frying pan and get to work. Of course, for my first perk I take big leagues for the 20% damage increase with melee weapons. This allows the rusty frying pan to inflict 28 damage per swing. That is really good for the early game, by the way, if the footage doesn't make that clear enough. I figured today that I'd side with the Minutemen, so I go along and help them with the deathclaw. Donning the power armor, I have now become the true combat chef, and as such, it is now time to put the pan to the test. As effective as it has been on the low-level raiders, I didn't have a lot of food for healing, so I opted to sprint past most of the raiders so that the deathclaw would appear right away, and they could fight amongst themselves in the hopes that it would drag aggro away from me while I battered its legs. A portion of this plan worked. Like, the raiders did indeed attack the deathclaw, but in the end I was basically the one running distraction as I got repeatedly tossed around as he attempts to crack me open in a similar vein as to how a tired Nerbit opens a tin of beans. I have just enough food and drink to survive, as well as drugs, which help to boost the damage of my melee strikes, especially in VATs. With a couple of good wallops, one of which is a crit, I'm able to take out the deathclaw and then turn my attention on the raiders, who are now probably wishing they let the deathclaw eat them instead. Especially this one fellow, who I managed to somehow impale with the frying pan. I let Preston know the way is clear, and then after selling most of my ammo to Carla, I continue to be a good Samaritan as I let Wolfgang see what's in the pan. It's pain. Before continuing to help Preston, I would need some good healing, so I used the spit at the red rocket to make myself some grub. Being close to leveling up again, I help Sturges out by making Sanctuary livable, and then take the first rank in the Blacksmith perk, the reason being I can bypass making the Rusty Pan normal and head straight to its 3rd Tempered tier. Not only does the Frying Pan now do extra limb damage, but its damage has increased by 29 points, bringing it up to 59 damage per swing. Oh, that is very good. My first objective, as is the norm, is to help out the settlers at 10 Pines Bluff, but on the way I stopped to help Sally Mathis with his pump problem. Really, I am here to see how well the frying pan does on Mirelurks, as after all I'm going to need to use it to clear out the castle of the creatures sooner or later. Normal attacks are very hit or miss against Mirelurks. If they manage to duck down, then it just bounces right off their shell. So I will need to rely on VATs to consistently do big damage. Nothing wrong with that, I should probably have put more points into agility though now that I think about it. At the very least, killing them does provide me with Mirelurk meat that can be used to cook a few decent recipes, and I will never say no to more healing supplies. Getting distracted from 10 Pines Bluff yet again, I head on over to Satellite Station Olivia so that I can clear the place out and grab the locker for the Abernathy's before they send me back this way. I was able to demonstrate my sheer willpower at one point when I took an exploding mole rat to the chest, and thanks to trying to attack it in vats at the exact same time, completely negated about 95% of the damage. Also, side note, when a mole rat explodes, you should totally get cooked mole rat meat from its corpse. I'm just saying. The majority of raiders are still going down to 1 or 2 smacks. That said, I am still a melee build, and as such, I am still required to get in close and do damage. You're probably saying, yeah, no duh, but that is incredibly detrimental to one's health when one of the raiders is armed with a minigun. Ak doesn't manage to kill me for what it's worth, but that's still a lot of damage regardless. I am probably going to need better armor. With the locket in hand, now it was finally time to greet the settlers, and from there head on down to continue wreaking havoc on the raider population as I destroy everything in my path at the Corvega assembly plant. The turrets are no doubt the most annoying to deal with, not just because some of them are in awkward places to reach, but because the small explosion that occurs when you destroy them does in fact damage you slightly, and it's not a lot, but it still adds up. I was able to engage in an honourable frying pan duel though. Unfortunately for my opponent, he only had a rusty pan, so his defeat was sealed before the fight even began. Returning to the settlers for a job well done, I then heeded my own advice for a change and upgraded some of my leather armor after stripping most of the raiders of theirs to be used as spare parts. Preston then congratulates me before doing his usual of interrupting himself to make sure I help out other settlements. Fortunately, he wants me to clear out Sunshine Tidings, which works well for me as I was heading that way to drop off the locket to gain the assistance of the Abernathy's, plus their insane supply of potatoes. I'm not sure where else to mention this, and truth be told, it only occurred to me to bring it up now as I'm writing this part of the script. I actually built a water purifier in Sanctuary so that I could have a stable supply of purified water for healing and potentially sell. Thank you, Jabbo, for reminding me that this is indeed something that you can do. Since people with normal, not rotting flesh can be taken down easily with a pan, then I need not mention how well it fares against the decaying, somewhat sentient corpses. I did have my first death on the way to Sunshine though, as I was faced with 2 super mutants. It seemed like an easy enough fight, but one Molotov was apparently enough to take me out. Again, my defense is concerning, and this is after upgrading my armor. I think what's happening is the Idiot Savant perk is popping off too much, and is causing me to level up so fast that I'm not able to find time to get better gear before the enemies level up with me. Next try, they don't burn me alive, and like everything else, they aren't able to stand up to getting their bones shattered beyond belief with this cooking utensil of doom. Reporting back for my XP, and it's about time I head to Diamond City, although I may just be saying that as I need to help out Oberlin Station, which is nearby. I made a point to mark Vault 81 on the map as well. Not for the vault itself, I couldn't care less about the advanced cavemen. What I really want is the edible innards of the Yaoguai on the ridge overlooking the vault's entrance. Many of you probably know where I'm going with this, but we will save it for later. For now, I am to head to Backstreet Apparel and do what I do best. I made a pit stop in Diamond City, more accurately Fallon's basement, in an attempt to buy a chef's hat. Sadly, there was none available, and before somebody mentions it, a brief visit to an alternate reality revealed that I couldn't pickpocket one off of Takahashi, alive or dead. Not to worry, there is one in an unmarked location near the combat zone, so I may as well make my way there and get on with my usual business in the downtown Boston area. Naturally, this part of Boston is bursting at the seams with raiders from scabbers to psychos and even a single survivalist that very nearly got the best of me because he had a little skull beside his name. As mentioned, there is an unmarked location here that I wish to check out, as it's one of the few locations where a chef's hat will spawn 100% of the time. The place in question is the Warren Theatre, so unlike a lot of unmarked buildings, it's pretty easy to spot given the massive sign jutting out the side of it. The building is free of hostiles, with the sole exception being a single synth who is trying to hide amongst a bunch of mannequins for some reason. After the synth is dismantled, I grab the hat, complete my combat chef look, which I decide to show off to the raiders at the combat zone. They were seemingly intimidated by my presence as they opened fire on me immediately. Well, unfortunately for them, the pan is mightier than the sword, and before long they are added to the rather long line of people bludgeoned to death today by a frying pan in the apocalypse. I agree to take Kate along, and then immediately send her back to Sanctuary. To jump ahead a bit here, an initial idea that I had was to recruit as many of the companions as possible, and then eventually send them off to the castle before the end of the game so they could all be equipped with frying pans to help me fight the synths. Well, long story short, that never ended up happening, and you will see why. Next up, I head on over to Swan to really test my mettle. Always figured he's a pretty good early game boss to see how well the build is doing. I drug myself up with buff out and the like, and get to work. As is to be expected, our damage isn't awful, but it is a far cry from what he can inflict on us in return. Once more, VATs and crits become a very reliable crutch, something that with my 2 broken legs, I clearly need right now. Despite the sheer size difference and the fact that one of his arms is about the size of my entire body, you can still somehow block his attacks, which leaves him open for a follow-up. As someone who has put way too much time into Sekiro, the back and forth of strike deflect is coming to me quite naturally. That is, until he decides to do this double attack where there is almost zero delay between me deflecting him and another hit coming down right on top of me. This leads to me having multiple snacks to save myself, so by the time I am eventually victorious, I am down more healing supplies than I would have liked. Because of this, I grab my rewards and then immediately head back to Diamond City to sell everything that isn't currently equipped on me, or any food. With the money that I get, I can then head over to the meat trader in town and, buy more food. So, even though I am siding with the Minutemen, and therefore have absolutely zero reason to even interact with the railroad at all this run, I think you know where I'm going with this. With them taken care of, you would think it's time to save Nick, but wrong again. It's now time for me to head for the castle and secure it for the Minutemen. While we know that VATs will work fairly well in the Mirelurks, I still try to use some sort of strategy here, as I have Preston and the gang set up a firing line while I draw most of them out into the open. It works fairly well, and before long all the crabs are cooked. Well, that technically comes later, but you know what I mean. Rather than smash up the unborn children, I instead grab as many of the eggs as possible. For those of you who are wondering why, it's simple really.
Making the mother of all omelets here, Jack.
Well, Mama Crab ain't best pleased about her children being used as a weekly Metal Gear reference, and as a result, she kills me dead. Alright, that's fair. Attempt number 2, and things go my way as I simply slow down time, as chefs are known to do, and then get as much damage in as possible with normal attacks before switching over to VATs for those oh so reliable crits. The buff jet that I crafted is the real MVP of this encounter, and saves my skin on more than one occasion. Killing the queen lets us retake the castle, but let's not kid ourselves, the real prize here is the Mirelurk queen meat that we now have, which can be cooked to make some incredibly effective meals. Alright, enough stalling, it's down to Park Street Station to rescue Nick. The Triggermen are about on par with Raiders, the major difference being they've slightly better weapons than early game Raiders, although no armour to speak of. As you might expect, this allows me to get by with ease. One of them was even equipped with a frying pan, and just my luck, it was a legendary Triggerman, and that frying pan was legendary. So after beating him to a pulp, I take the pan, and sadly, the legendary effect is only a 25% disarm chance when I block a melee attack. It's not awful, but considering there aren't a ton of enemies solely using melee weapons in the main quest, it's not great. Regardless, I take it as it's still technically better than my own if I upgrade it, and then after a few more pan strikes, make my way to Nick, and then backpedal our way to the entrance. So remember that Yagwai from before? Well, whenever I cooked up the Mirelurk queen meat, I also turned the Yagwai into a roast. Now, other than just healing you for a decent amount of health, the roast also gives the player plus 10 to melee damage. Except that is in fact not true. Thanks to a glitch in the game, rather than giving you a plus 10, it instead increases your melee damage by 500% for about an hour. That sounds pretty powerful.
Any idea how much this is gonna set me back?
I wouldn't be here if it weren't for your two-timing dames.
And you would be correct. Anytime I have used a melee weapon in Fallout 4, I get asked about this glitch, so consider this the one and only time I'm going to show it off. Do not worry about me being overpowered, the game gets me back for this later on. Back in Diamond City, me and Nick raid Kellogg's house, him to get clues for Sean, and me for all the sweet food and drinks on the shelves. Following dog meat is an option of course, but not one I ever do, so it's time to start heading south from Sunshine Tidings. Seeing how the Yagwai buff is still in effect, I use the secret entrance in the nearby church to get the jump on Red and the raiders from the inside before fighting my way back out. Just like Kellogg's house, there's a lot of food here for more healing. At this stage, I am honestly probably good to go for the rest of the game. Hell, all the Mirelurks I killed in the castle have been turned into snacks and would probably be more than enough on their own. That's not even the best of what happened here. During the murder spree, I leveled up and took the second rank in the blacksmith perk, which means I can unlock the final upgrade for the frying pan. So I go back to Sanctuary and... Oh. For the record, that's the damage it's doing with the Yagwai roast glitch. Normally, along with my perks and big leagues, I think it would be doing just over 100. With damage numbers like these, you would think Fort Hagen was a breeze, and you would be mostly correct. Fighting and breaking down the synths was so easy and free, it was almost boring. The turrets, however, still ripped right through me within seconds, resulting in my death and forcing me to run through a second time. I'm able to save on time when it comes to Kellogg. He may have taken my son, but I take his leg, so I'd say we are more than even. I grab his brain bits, and after the usual rump through the memory den, it's off to the glowing sea. On the way, I ran into my first members of the Brotherhood of Steel. For some reason, they decided to land their vertibird while they took out some of the nearby gunners. Seeing a golden opportunity before me, I sprinted over and attempted to destroy it with the frying pan. Unbeknownst to me, however, the roast had now worn off, so I was sadly not able to output enough damage to take it out. Still did a good amount of it though. To appease me, I killed the men it left behind, which were still easy enough, especially in VATS. The vertibird was still after me, and considering there is no option to just hurl the frying pan at it, I darted off in between the trees to avoid fire. This led me right into the arms of an alpha deathclaw, which, you know, may be a lot stronger, but at the very least, I can fight him. I employed a similar game plan as to what I did with Swan, and it worked like a charm. It worked so well in fact that when I killed him, I was able to briefly see his body ascending to the afterlife before I pulled it back down. While making my way through Green Filter Land, I noticed I was close to the encounter with Mercy, the raider using the BFG from Doom. I cannot use the weapon obviously, but I thought I may as well kill them for the XP. I didn't even really have to engage in the fight if I'm being honest. Turns out, despite the radius on the BFG's blasts, if there is even one thing in between you, then the blast will not hurt you, as you can see from me standing just underneath him when he fires. One pan strike finished him off, and it was back to the walk to Virgil's cave. With some careful maneuvering, I land a sneak attack critical on the Deathclaw, bringing it to half health. As I just took down an alpha, it should come as no surprise that a normal Deathclaw is no trouble at all. I chat with Virgil to get the quest to take out the Courser, and now it was time to make my way through Green Tech. I haven't had a Green Tech go this smooth since the Shredder video, and we all know how that went. In fact, just like that video, my frying pan is now so strong that it completely obliterates limbs, causing most kills to result in either an arm or a head popping. Keep in mind, by the way, this is without the Bloody Mess perk. I make sure to take out everyone for XP and fun, as well as to build up a crit in VATS so that I may use it the instant I meet the Courser for maximum damage. I then follow that up with 2 more hits in VATS before he turns invisible, and with a few more whacks, he crumbles before me. I take the chip and decode it myself because fuck the railroad, and before building the teleporter, head on over to the castle to meet up with Ronnie and have a rather anticlimactic battle with Sarge. I have no idea what is happening here, by the way. Like, my first hit in VATS does normal damage, but then the next 2 follow-ups literally deplete the rest of his health bar. Now, do keep in mind I grabbed the Rooted perk earlier in the run for more melee damage while I'm standing still, but I don't think it should be doing that much. Anyway, afterwards I build and test the artillery, and now it is time to build the teleporter and finish the run. Although, not how you may think. Remember how I mentioned before that the game would get its own back on me for abusing that Yaguai roast glitch? Well, it did so right now by just failing to recognise when the teleporter was constructed. I have beaten this game many times, some of which are videos. So I know how to connect all of the wires and such up correctly, so I have done it right. But no, Sturges would just refuse to acknowledge the fact that it was finished. I tried scrapping it and building it from scratch, loading an older save, downloading the unofficial patch mod, and even the cheat terminal, which basically acts like console commands for console players, and unfortunately, none of these ideas worked. On the topic of the cheat terminal, I did try using it to warp myself inside to see if that would fix anything, but it didn't. The door to Father's office was locked and I couldn't reach the robot Sean, and even if I killed one of the important scientists and got the quest to leave the Institute, there was no way for me to complete that quest either, as the emergency teleporter was offline, and again, even using the cheat terminal to warp me out did nothing. So, after a very long time of trying to figure out fixes, including rewiring the damn thing every which way imaginable, and with multiple generators, more so than it would need, I unfortunately had to reach the conclusion that nothing could be done, and that I could not beat Fallout 4 with the frying pan. To compensate for that, I did download another mod to make me feel better. See y'all next week.